Welcome once again to the Maximum Performance webinar series. Here at Maximum Acceleration, the professionals coaching company, we originally created this program to bring a community of top performing originators and realtors together so that we could share powerful concepts and ideas with you that will help you get to the next level in your business much faster. I mean, the whole concept of Maximum Acceleration is getting you from where you are to where you want to go as fast as humanly possible. So this free webinar series was just another initiative to accomplish that goal. Well, today's program, I've titled it Death of the MSA, Building Purchase Business Without Buying Agents. Part of the reason that we titled that is as you guys have all experienced, rates have shifted back up again. For the most part, the only refinances that are getting done are need-based refinances, debt consolidation, or home improvement style of programs, and the volume's skinnied down quite a bit. But over the last 8-10 years, our industry has enjoyed such great rates and so many ongoing cycles of refinance volume. It's kept a lot of these companies alive, and as a result of that, many of the sales managers and company executives and owners that I talk to on a regular basis have indicated that a lot of our sales skills have gotten pretty soft. So by default, a lot of our industry has fallen towards the idea of setting up marketing service agreements, desk leases, ABAs, affiliate business arrangements, and those kind of things as a method of being able to gain visibility and loyalty from agents. Well, the problem with that is in the increasingly tightened regulatory environment we've been experiencing the last couple of years, and the increasing and heightened scrutiny of the CFPB, and in many cases how the CFPB has a much more stern opinion of whether an MSA is even should be legal or not, and somewhat in disagreement with the federal courts, that it's become a much riskier business model. And whereas 5-10 years ago, it was almost the expectation of the market that we felt like we had to participate in if we even wanted a seat at the table, now that has weakened to where CFPB is trying to make it more of a level playing field. So how do you compete? What is it that we can do to create value with business partners like realtors? Obviously the nature of the business has changed dramatically. I mean, I've been doing mortgages since 1996, and back then realtors controlled about 80% of the lead flow. I mean, you didn't have to work all that hard. Agents, 8 out of 10 buyers typically weren't pre-approved, and so the agent could refer us 8 out of 10 times. And as long as we were valuable, as long as we could close deals on time and communicate well throughout the transaction, that was enough to win business in the late 90s and early 2000s when I was building my origination practice and career back then. Today, people shop differently, so we need a stronger value proposition to really answer that first and foremost question. Now, whether you've ever been asked this directly by a realtor or not, it's the question that's in the back of their mind when we're trying to make that initial approach, right? The why should I work with you versus the other 5 or 10 or 15 loan officers in town who also seem to do a good job. Now, think about how our industry typically promotes themselves. I mean, here's the reality. 9 out of 10 loan officers that I talk to or work with in our coaching environment, when I start to get into this question with them, or if I ask this in a group training session or a corporate event type of program, often I ask, okay, so how do you try and differentiate yourself at first point of contact with new potential business partners like realtors, for example? Well, a lot of loan officers start talking about either 1, variety of program and price, or 2, quality of service. Now, here's the only challenge with that. Out of 10 loan officers, how many do you think are basically saying the same thing, right? We can close on time, we can close fast, we've got great service, we can communicate well throughout the transaction. Here's the problem. If 99 out of 100 promise it, but 98 out of 99 fail to deliver it, are we really raising our credibility, or are we actually lowering it? So then we've got to think about how do we then differentiate ourselves from the rest of the flock when everybody else is pitching pretty much the same stuff. How do we stand out? How do we be different? How do we look to the agents more attractive? Well, there's a thing we call value, right? And I often talk in our coaching environment with our clients about what we call transformational value. You may have heard the term, for example, UVP, or unique value proposition. First of all, the key word there is unique. What makes us different and more valuable than all of the other loan officers in the market, who in many cases agents are seeing increasing pressure from loan officers, getting multiple calls a day because now the refis are off the table. So we got a lot of desperate loan officers out there pounding on realtors' doors begging for business. And that doesn't separate or differentiate. That doesn't make us unique. What does make us unique is when we can create enough value that lives so far above and beyond the ability to close one deal that the folks that are pitching great service deal by deal become more or less irrelevant. Now, that doesn't mean we can have poor service and still survive, but that's just the basic job description. I mean, so one of the approach strategies we can often use when we create that value and when we separate, one is recognizing what they want, the other is adding value above and beyond and satisfying what they need. So when you start thinking about the needs of business professionals like realtors, financial planners, CPAs, and insurance agents, we can all benefit from leveraged exposure. We could all benefit from higher volume of leads per week and per month. We could all benefit from better efficiency throughout any one transaction, and that often includes better communication. We could all benefit from being able to manage the way we communicate with our customers to encourage and inspire them to grow to a significantly higher level. And so as a result of what we're trying to create and what we're trying to build value for with these business partners, the realities are that that we want to create value, and we want to create a way in which, sorry, I had a delivery pop in while I'm presenting this webinar, guys, so I apologize about that. Got a little distracted for a second there. Anyway, so what we want to try and create with these business partners is want to try and create the kind of partnership that goes so far above and beyond the value of closing a deal that we become an irreplaceable and invaluable asset to them, where they feel like they can't afford not to introduce us to every seller and buyer they're working with, right? So what I'm going to share with you today is a couple of key conversations and ways that we can add so much value that the cost or price or risk becomes irrelevant. Now, if I went to a typical realtor and told them, I want you to introduce me to every buyer you talk to, even the ones that are pre-approved with somebody else, another lender, even if especially, and it's easy to get the referrals of the ones that are approved with bozolender.com, right? The online lender that the realtor's never heard of and they don't trust. That's easy. But what about when that buyer's pre-approved with another lender who has a solid reputation, they've been in the market for a long time, and they're well respected in the community? Well, that's a much higher sale. And if you put yourself in the realtor's shoes for a few minutes, what are you asking them to risk, right? Why should they introduce you versus Joe loyal loan officer who's a good originator in that market? Well, you're essentially asking that realtor to risk their paycheck, right? And that's where the fear and anxiety come from, why agents typically won't introduce us to somebody who's already pre-approved. So as we look at the dynamic of how we create this value, and as we look at how we transform that relationship, if we can raise the benefit, the cost doesn't matter, and the risk or fear of the agent goes way down, and we can get those introductions. We can get those handoffs or referrals of the buyers who are already pre-approved with somebody else. So let's talk a little bit about how we do that. Well, one of them is we've got to be way more valuable, right? There's two ways to balance that value equation. One is to be more valuable. The other is to be lower price. In this case, just like everybody else. Well, think about the example of buying stock, right? I can buy stock at E-Trade for $10 a trade, or I can go to Merrill Lynch and I'll pay $200. Why would I pay 20 times more for the same basic transaction? Well, the obvious advantage there is that I hope I'm going to get a more accurate and more effective result by working with somebody who has superior knowledge and advice. So when we start thinking about how we transform that relationship with agents, we want to think about being less of a vendor, closing one deal at a time, and much more of a partner in their success. And that's where we're going to focus the rest of the energy for today. Now, a couple of weeks ago, right before the holidays, we did another webinar, which you can find on our website, that we called Failure is Not an Option. We went fairly deep into how to do a planning conversation, more of a tactical, let's put our ducks in a row as far as how to make 2017 a great year type of program. I'd encourage you to refer back to that, because that's another great way of adding significant value and being a true asset and resource. But let's talk about when it comes to actually finding more deals, and how do we go out and find more deals in the environment in which we're operating and living right now. Well, one of the key concepts is in the difference between a partner versus a provider. I used the definition of Proverbs 16:22. It says, plans fail where there is no counsel, but they succeed when counselors are many. Somebody who can give us outside perspective. I guess let me look at it, introduce it maybe a slightly different way. You know, one of the best ways I've ever found to explain partnership and what a true partnership looks like is to go back and reflect on a study that was done around the turn of the last century by a group of scientists. They were trying to come up with a unit of measure for a large amount of force, oddly enough called the horsepower study. Go figure, right? Well, here's the thing. They were hooking these draft horses, these amazing, gigantic animals with a tremendous amount of strength, to weight sled testing. And they figured out that one could pull about 12,000 pounds by himself. So they figured you could get at least double the results. But the problem was when they hitched the two together, working in tandem, pulling the same load, the record was over 104,000 pounds of pull, or roughly 8 times the results of one pulling by himself. So when we start to think about what would that look like in the dynamic of how we can partner with realtors, financial planners, insurance agents, CPAs, family law attorneys, people who are involved in when couples are getting married, wedding planners, florists, those type of people, we can team up with them and create significantly better results. Let's just take a basic comparison, your average realtor and loan officer, right? If we're each generating organically 15 to 20 leads a month, and we were to share those leads equally, we would expect at least 30 leads if we're each generating 15. But if we could really truly create that 8 to 10x return, what would that look like? Well, that would be over 120 leads a month if we could get 8 times the results. Now, some of you may think I'm psychotic at this point, and that would be physically impossible to do, but let's take a few minutes and explore the possibilities of why and how we could potentially, and suspend maybe your momentary disbelief and see what we could do to create something significantly bigger. One of the reasons that horsepower thing works is because there's a concept called leverage involved, distance and space and, physics that went way over my head. I flunked high school physics. So anyway, but I do know that there's one thing about leverage, right? You got a bar and a pivot point. It's a simple machine that can create massive value, right? So when leverage is applied correctly, if I just move that bar a couple feet to one side, all of a sudden I get a 5-to-1 advantage, and 100 pounds of force can lift 1,000 pounds of weight. So what is the leverage of creating more value with business partners, creating enough value where they feel like they can't afford not to introduce us to every seller and buyer they work with? Well, one of the first ones comes down to a simple law of caring. You guys have all heard the cliche, people won't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Yeah, I mean, that's trite. We hear it all the time, but can we afford to dismiss what we hear frequently? Because would it have become a common phrase enough to be ignored if it weren't fundamentally true, right? So let's break that down just a little bit. What does that mean we have to do proactively to create enough value where they care what we have to share? Well, part of that is about understanding what drives and motivates them, and this gets into what we call a power interview process that I'll talk a little bit later about how to go a little deeper, but ultimately it's finding out what their motivators are. What are the things they really want to accomplish? What would they, looking back a year from now, where would they like to be in their business and in their life? And if we begin with the end in mind, can we help them create that ultimate vision of success? Again, I would highly recommend you guys hop on our website. There's an archive of our webinar programs that we did. Myself and Coach Earl right before December did a really, really solid program on how to do that type of planning conversation with the business partners you're seeking to engage. But a lot of it comes from this second law of caring, which is we don't know what we don't know until someone cares enough to show us. So we as business professionals, we as mortgage professionals have the opportunity to provide insight, guidance, support, and value for these agents that they may not necessarily see for themselves. I mean, think about it from this perspective. What do the top athletes all have in common? The Michael Jordans, the Wayne Gretzkys, the Tom Bradys of the world. Well, they all had somebody who cared as much about their own success, if not more, the person that would challenge them to refine their skills, the person who would push them to stretch their ability, the person who would point out to them where their technique may not necessarily be directly on point with what they want to achieve. When we help provide that type of accountability and that type of masterminding effect, we can become a huge asset to those business partners like realtors and real estate agents, right? So what does it take to be a great accountability partner or a great resource to those business partners? Well, there's a couple of key components to it. First of all is we've got to have some credible knowledge or at least know where to get credible knowledge. Now, all of you on this webinar have an amazing resource at your disposal called the internet, right? Googling and paying attention to and tuning in some of the thought leaders in the real estate industry and talking about best practices and how to help find more people. There's a whole archive of resources available for Maximum Acceleration through our free membership program. You're welcome to sign up. No cost, no commitment on that. And we've got an entire library of hundreds worth of our entire webinar series talking about how to help boost buyer visibility and help agents grow their business is at your disposal, and you're welcome to jump in and take part in that, with helping your agents and business partners find results, find ways of overcoming the obstacles and challenges. Also, sometimes it's that whole forest for the trees effect, right? We get so busy being busy, we forget to take a step back and look at things from that outside perspective. So you can be a resource that gets them to reflect on, is there a better, smarter, faster, easier way for those agents to accomplish what they want to accomplish? And being the person who, gets them to think about or at least question, are they executing at their highest level of potential, right? I don't know, I could be totally wrong here, Mr. Agent, but is there an easier, faster, better way of generating a higher volume with less stress and anxiety? That could lead to a stronger pipeline for the future and a higher volume of ultimately what you want, which is closed deals. Instead of scurrying around and running yourself ragged, trying to be everything for everybody, is there maybe a faster, easier, smarter way? Of course, it's also somebody who can be disciplined, somebody who's steady, somebody who's dependable that they can rely upon, that's going to be there week in and week out and provide them perspective, guidance, and support, kind of that running buddy principle. Guys, we all know how easy it is to break the promises we make to ourselves, but how much harder it is to break the promises we make to somebody we trust and respect. Well, you can be that for those business partners. And ultimately, when you start really digging into it and you start asking them, what's in the way? What's the most significant obstacle, Mr. Agent, to doubling, tripling, or quadrupling your business in the next 12 months, to taking you from 1 or 2 deals a month now to 3 to 4 deals a month average by the end of the year? You see, Mr. Agent, I want to be the asset and resource that helps you get substantially more business, not just the guy who gets your deals done. I mean, at the end of the day, if I can't give you accurate, timely pre-approvals, communicate well throughout the transaction, and close reasonably consistently on time, I nor any other loan officer really deserve your business, do they? So what I'm going to introduce you to today, guys, is a couple of key strategies that flow into a conversation we call the optimizing lead flow conversation. There's really 4 sub-conversations to this, but it's really about helping them cast a bigger net and attract a higher volume of business. So one of the first things that we often find that agents have a tendency to be a little bit off track on, especially a lot of the realtors that I coach personally, is they get so busy being busy that they have a soft sales process. Most agents, if they think about it, the basic way that they try and convert buyers is get them in the car, get them in the house. And when I've even challenged agents about maybe that's not the best way to approach it, they have a tendency to get a little defensive even. So we have to be a little diplomatic in how we present that idea. But that's how they build rapport, and I understand that. I understand that's how you connect with your customer. That's how you create the space to be able to ask them what's important to them about the house, and you do a consultative process in that respect. But does that really differentiate the agent from the other 900 realtors in the market? And more importantly, can they really afford the time to be showing property to buyers who aren't 100% ready to buy? I mean, let's be honest, in today's environment, probably only 1 or 2 out of 10 are the green bucket ready to go right now. Maybe 2 or 3 out of 10 are the longer than 24 months, if ever, because I've got so many serious challenges. And probably 4 to 6 fall into the silver bucket, or the rest, one of the 2 middle buckets that they could get themselves ready with a little bit of effort. So let's focus on helping the agent understand the value of waiting until we have an accurate and fully qualified and documented pre-qualification. The value of time conversation, you guys are probably already very familiar with this, but it's basically articulating the agent that not all pre-quals are created equal. Unfortunately, there's a lot of loan officers out there who do verbal only verifications of a borrower's credit, income, and asset. They're not looking at documentation. They're not evaluating what it's going to take to prove beyond all reasonable doubt that the borrower has the merit to qualify. And that's kind of the game we're in right now, right? I mean, at the end of the day, it's a guilty until you can prove yourself innocent type environment, right? You guys know that. So that conversation with the agent, that value of time conversation, is where we're basically getting the agent to think about and understand the importance of taking that initiative to follow through. And when we talk about in a tight market how we really shouldn't be potentially even encouraging buyers to go shop for property until we've accomplished that part. Now, again, there's 2 objections that you'll typically get from agents at this stage of the conversation, which is, well, if I don't do it, somebody else will. And the second one is, but that's how I sell myself. Well, there's 2 issues with that. One is, I understand, Mr. Realtor, that there's some concern and anxiety there. There's 2 things that I can do to help you overcome that. One is I'm going to be educating the customer on the benefits of why it's to their advantage to wait until they have a solid, fully documented pre-qualification. And even if I have the lending capability to do it, to go all the way to an underwriting pre-approval, because it helps them save money in the offer process, especially if they're going to be competing against multiple other buyers at the same time. Secondly, I'm going to give a very strong endorsement of that agent, because I want that agent to understand the value of me selling them so they don't have to. And when I give a third-party testimonial to that buyer for that agent, the agent doesn't have to work near as hard at trying to sell themselves. And that's kind of that endorsement part of the conversation. I mean, I guess it comes down to thinking about it from this perspective. I mean, if this guy was trying to sell you exercise equipment, probably wouldn't be very successful, would he? There's a lack of credibility there, right? Whereas this is more of your image of the guy you want to buy exercise equipment from, right? So when working with these agents, helping them understand that we can provide a very strong endorsement for them, that we can edify them and give a testimonial to how that agent is going to save that buyer time, money, stress, and all that, we do something kind of like a sample agent endorsement. Well, Mr. Realtor, at the end of the day, one of the things I always want to say about you when I'm first working with a new buyer is why it's to their benefit to work with you exclusively. I mean, at the end of the day, I usually will talk to buyers about, and even the buyers that I'm going to be introducing you to that come from other sources, I'm going to be saying to them, at the end of the day, Mr. Buyer, a skilled, knowledgeable, professional real estate advisor is a key asset in making the home buying process take less time and be much smoother. In addition, if you'll empower that agent to work with you on a buyer's agent relationship basis, they can explain the legalities up to you, and by the way, it's usually something the seller pays for. At the end of the day, they can potentially more aggressively negotiate on your behalf, be more of your advocate when it comes to getting you a better deal on the home of your dreams. So I highly recommend you work with Susie because she's one of those skilled, knowledgeable advisors. Whether you choose to work with her or not, at the end of the day, I think the time you'd spend with her would be well worth it. So I'll have her give you a call. Is that okay? Or even better than that, if I can actually pick up the phone, if the clients are sitting in my office, I'm doing a face-to-face consultation, why not just pop on the speakerphone and dial Susie's number, introduce her right then, and of course if I get the voicemail, then I can leave a voicemail doing a similar introduction and endorsement. See guys, this is where we come back to that, all the way back to that very first thing I introduced you to, that unique value proposition, right? Why is it to their benefit to work with that agent and that team member? Well, it's got to be at that benefit level. How does it save that customer time and money? See, at that point, we've transformed the relationship to the point where the price or service on one deal isn't as relevant to that customer because they're looking at the value way above and beyond the price or ability to close one deal. That's what we call transformational value. So let's talk about one other key way that we can help build and boost agent value. And it's what we call boosting the lead flow, or what we call opportunity mining, right? At the end of the day, we're dealing with customers in the home buying and home selling process, helping them make what is one of the most important financial decisions that that family is likely to make. And almost always are those decisions driven by life events. I mean, let's be honest. Does anybody really like to move, right? I mean, I don't know if you've ever sold a house. The last one we sold was 13 years ago. It sat on the market for 8 months, and we literally, you know the game, right? All your stuff's in a box. You've staged the home. You're trying to live that way, but that doesn't work real well when you got 3 kids like I did at the time. And trying to keep the house, because it's, Murphy's Law. It's the, day I've got a whole calendar stacked full of appointments, and the realtor calls and says they want to show the house at 2:30. I'm going, oh, brother, now what, right? You guys have experienced that, right? Anyway, that's not a fun way to live. So why do people move? Well, it's because the pain of staying in the home they're in is greater than the pain of moving, and so we do what we have to do. It's because of things like having children, or needing to move to a smaller space, or moving to a different part of town because of job issues or concerns, or better schools for our kids, or those types of life events are the things that drive housing. And so when we start thinking about what are those life changes and who is likely to be experiencing those life changes, then we can create a source of business that goes way above and beyond just the agent. And then we can generate essentially consumer direct opportunities. Like, let me give you a good example of this, okay? Back into the late 90s, early 2000s, I was working with a realtor by the name of Kay and a real estate, an insurance agent by the name of Linda. Kay and Linda were kind of new to the market, both of them. We were connected to a military community right outside the gates of Fort Leonard Wood here. And so one of the things that we realized that we had an opportunity to do is Linda, the insurance agent, had a huge book of business she had bought, but she didn't have a lot of great relationships with those customers, especially the auto-only policy holders in that book of business. And as a result of that, she was literally getting 2 to 3 cancellation calls a week, sometimes a day, of people that were, going to go to the next insurance company down the road, the Geico effect, 15 minutes to save 15% thing. So Linda and Kay and I were brainstorming one afternoon trying to come up with some ideas of how to help Kay find additional home buyers and sellers, helping Linda try and convert more of those auto-only policyholders to homeowners and what we could do. Well, we came up with an educational initiative we called a Home Opportunity Initiative, okay, or I tend to refer to it a little bit more as a home opportunity advocacy campaign than more of a community service project. Well, anyway, long story short, we advertised it as an educational program, and it was like crickets. One couple showed up the first night. Yeah, two people, and they were married. Now, we did actually help that couple move through the process of buying their first home, and we helped the family dramatically improve their living situation. But we went back to the drawing board and figured out, okay, what will people show up for, right? Well, we figured out that people like to show up for food and booze, right? People like to show up for things that feel or sound more like a party, more of a social event, a networking opportunity. So we repackaged that idea and we did them more as client appreciation events. You know, food and hors d'oeuvres or cocktails and hors d'oeuvres at 5:30, brief introductory program, open house, here's what's new at XYZ Insurance type program. And in the context of that short little program, we talked to people about some of the very high-level benefits of buying versus renting, of how to move into a better home, and what were some of the urgent market opportunities that existed in that market. You see, we're trying to educate people on the fact that they don't know what they don't know. And why aren't these people engaged? Well, it's because you realize there's two types of leads, right? The small percentage, the 10 or 15% of people who already know they want a new house and are calling us, is a relatively small slice of the overall opportunity. I mean, think about in the market we're in right now. Think about the type of buying power that a customer has with mortgages that are in the low fours and how much more buying power they have now before rates go back up into the mid-sixes. I mean, they've got 20 to 30% more buying power now. And if you look at some of the home affordability indexes out there, or the National Association of Realtors being probably the most prominent one, I mean, you'd have to go literally all the way back to the late 40s and early 50s to get as much house for the monthly payment as you can get right now. Unfortunately, the people who are most likely to benefit from this home buying opportunity are the least likely to be aware of it. You know, maybe they've been misled by the media and some of the misinformation that's out there in the general consumer public. You know, maybe they've been convinced that you got to have perfect credit and 20% down. Maybe they feel like the safe thing to do financially is to continue to rent and work to save up a little more down payment, not realizing that, you know, in most markets around the country, you can get a nicer house for a lower payment than what you get for renting, especially with these ultra cheap rates we're experiencing still. Anyway, long story short is, you know, why aren't these people engaged? Who's missing out? How many are there? There's, you know, national statistics would indicate that people move every, you know, 5 to 7 years, which means 13 to 20%, 1/5 to 1/7 of the population is already thinking about doing something different with their house. They just may not realize they have that opportunity. So when we come up with an initiative, when we start thinking about how we can get that message in front of those people who are in a less than ideal living situation, encourage them to think about doing something different with their choices and looking into what the possibilities are, we can create a lot of momentum for those families. And like I said, we're not looking to twist somebody's arm and force them into something that's not a great fit for them and their family. What we are looking to do is help them realize that there's something they don't know that could be keeping them out of a much better financial situation and living situation for their family. So I no longer feel like I need an excuse to try and call somebody. I have a good reason to want to talk to somebody about their housing opportunities and what is or isn't, you know, an opportunity for them. I have an opportunity to talk to the folks that are, you know, in a position that's less than desirable, the renters, the people that are in a house that's too small, the family that the kids are grown and gone and they're empty nesters still living in a 3-story home. Maybe they'd be much more comfortable in a more luxurious single-level family home in a gated community on a golf course so they can enjoy life and travel and not have to worry about maintenance and security as much. You know, I can overcome a lot of call reluctance and anxiety for prospecting when I'm looking at it from one, why it would benefit that family, and two, from more of a service initiative style approach. They don't know what buying power they have right now. I'm just trying to get that message in front of them and help them understand what they might be missing out on. The best home buying opportunity in the last 90 years is what it comes down to. I can also inspire and encourage them to introduce me not only to the folks they know in their sphere of influence, their friends, their family, their colleagues, the people their kids go to school with that they see at the PTA or the Girl Scouts meeting or whatever. I can also encourage them to introduce me to people that they trust and respect who could become a gateway contact, like a financial planner or an estate planning attorney or an accountant or an insurance agent like Linda, right? You know, some of this is just capturing and making, creating value, leveraging opportunities that are connected to what we already have. You know, if you've got a handful of deals in the pipeline right now, you've got all you need to double your business in the next 2 to 3 months. So when we come back to that active opportunity mining conversation and we talk to the agents about how, you know, we can create value for them, this optimizing lead flow conversation that I've introduced you guys to a couple of times already, I'm going to jumping around to try and find the right slide here for momentarily, but you know, there's 4 key elements to this, right? One is, can they afford to be spending time with buyers who aren't ready to be competitive when making offers? The second is the incubation. You know, let us work with the clients who aren't quite ready but could be in 6 months or less and bring them back to you, Mr. Agent, when they are ready. You know, it's kind of like making deposits in a bank of future opportunity that we can start to draw back from in 3-6 months down the road, particularly if we've got a good contact management system in place. Thirdly, the endorsement that we're going to give of them that educates the customer on why the customer should work with that particular agent and does their sales job for them so that they don't have to. By the way, it's a lot easier for me to say something glowing and fabulous about them where it can be kind of awkward to figure out how to say that about themselves, right? The third, and then the fourth part of that conversation is just talking to the agents about how, you know, at the end of the day, Mr. Realtor, you know, I can, you know, we have an active opportunity mining system in place. What that means is throughout the multiple times during the course of a transaction where, you know, where buyers are, you know, where it's a naturally pleasant and fun conversation, like when we give them their initial pre-qualification or when they land a contract and we're finalizing the details, or when, you know, you know, the appraisal comes in a couple thousand over value and we get to congratulate them on winning the equity lottery. You know, those are fun, natural conversations. Well, we have anywhere from 5 to 8 of those during the course of any normal transaction, and during those times we're encouraging and inspiring our clients to introduce us to the folks they know, the 5 to 7 people in their immediate 30 to 40 friends circle of influence that are already you know, thinking about or talking about potentially doing something different with their home. Because we're using that active opportunity mining conversation, because we're asking poignant who-based questions of those customers, asking them who they know that is in a less than desirable living situation that we could encourage them to introduce us to so that they can help their friends and family. Now we can create a massively scalable conversation that has every customer we've got introducing us to 5 to 7 families who might be in a less than desirable living situation, and out of every one of those 5 to 7 introductions we hopefully can get 1 or 2 actual deals. Does it work every time? No, but does it work a majority enough of the time that it continues to be worth doing? So at the end of the day, unfortunately, Mr. Realtor, I don't get to use that active opportunity mining system unless I have the opportunity to work with that client. So I don't mean to be facetious here, Mr. Realtor, but can you afford not to introduce me to every buyer and every seller you're working with? You see, guys, now we've created so much additional value for the agent that they're pretty solidly on board with, yeah, well, that makes sense. I can't afford not to introduce you to every buyer every time. And that's where we create that exponential growth. You know, the one who introduces you to 2 and 4 and 8 and 16, and it literally explodes from there. Now, as we move forward with executing some of these proactive home opportunity mining and home opportunity initiatives and marketing, there's some things that we need to do to put some feet to the fire and get them to make some commitments. And as we work forward week over week, as we're building these strong partnerships where we and the agent are working together in unity to create significantly higher value, that affords us an opportunity to where we create depth and commitment and loyalty that overcomes a lot of the other more surface level type stuff. A lot of it just comes down to consistency. And we talked a little bit about that consistency and focusing on pacing and timing in that webinar we did back in December. But in the interest of time, I want to open up a couple of things here and take a few questions. I mean, basically the types of conversations we have with agents and where we tactically plan what we and they can do as a unit to work to engage and find more families that need our help. That's kind of what this planning process is really all about. So anyway, guys, go ahead and populate any questions that you have into the webinar Q&A. One of the first questions that I noticed popped up in here that I'll go ahead and address, there's several people asking about whether you'd be able to get a copy of the PowerPoint and the recording for today's presentation or not. Yes. Now, do us a favor, be a little patient, because it does take a couple of hours behind the scenes to convert the video, render it so it plays easily in streaming, and then package the PowerPoint and everything to get it out to you. But by the end of the week, we will have an email out to everybody who's registered for today's webinar with the links to the recording and all that. Secondly, one of the other questions that came through here was, okay, the Home Opportunity Initiative and what is the Home Opportunity Evaluation or Home Opportunity Review? You guys saw a screen that I popped through fairly quickly. That is like similar to how a financial planner talks about a portfolio review or an IRA rollover review or that type of thing. We've just kind of borrowed that and applied it to the home buying process. It's easy for people to say yes to, especially when we package it in a, one of the easiest ways to find out what opportunities are available to you, Mr. Customer, is to take advantage of what we call our Home Opportunity Review. There's no cost or obligation for the service. It's just the easiest and fastest way we've found to help a family understand what opportunities might be right under their nose that they may not be aware of. And like I said, there's no cost or obligation for that service. Okay, so cannot wait to receive this PowerPoint. Wanted someone from your company do a presentation for our realtors. Is that an option? Yes, that is an option. The other question that I'm going to jump into here really quickly, just before the top of the hour, one of the other questions asked is, okay, you've heard me talk about how this is just the icing on the cake here, just the quick little snapshot in 45 minutes of what it, in essence is about a 10-hour or 12-hour training program we offer. Somebody else asked what else we do at Maximum Acceleration, so why don't I cover that issue real quick. First of all, here at Maximum Acceleration, we offer 3 different levels of service. We've got our home study programs, which are kind of a do-it-yourself kit. We've got group and on-site coaching programs that are available for us to, or one of our coaches to come out and speak at live events. If you have a company sales rally coming up, or if you need a speaker for a realtor association or a quarterly estate or regional event, we offer those kind of things. Or we can custom tailor some group programming. If you have a team of originators that are all wanting to build their skills, we can do it that way. Of course, we also have the one-on-one coaching program, but I don't want to get too deep into that. Like, for example, one of the things that you guys might be interested in connection to the topic of today's webinar is we have a program called the Double Your Income with Power Partners training program. Okay, it is a 6-part on-demand video course training with a lot of the tools, templates, and skills that teaches what we call the Power Partner Development System. It is a step-by-step strategic methodical system to identify, attract, convert, and commit to a high loyalty, high profitability partnerships with realtors, financial planners, CPAs, insurance agents, and other potential business partners that you could team up with. It's not only the system I used personally as an originator to get to about my last 12 months in retail origination, 237 purchase deals, most of which was referred by 13 core partners that I worked with. But also is something we've taught literally thousands of originators how to use to dramatically accelerate their business partnerships. The other cool thing about that is you also kind of put your lead flow on autopilot, so you don't start every month at 0 and end up having to, hunt for business and dial for dollars all the time, so you're not constantly caught in that trap. The program used to retail for $695. If you're interested in taking advantage of it, you can hop on our website, pick it up today for only $247. If you go to MaximumCoach.com, www.MaximumCoach.com, click on the shopping tab, and then at the top of that tab, you'll see a click here that'll take you into the online shopping cart. Of course, you want to make sure you enter the, after selecting the program, the Double Your Income with Power Partners program, you can apply the discount code DBLMAX, and that'll drop the price to that $247. Otherwise, if you'd like more information about the one-on-one coaching program or any of the other on-site or group coaching programs we offer, the best way we found to help you understand the value of coaching is just to experience it. So we offer a no-cost, no-obligation strategy session. It's a one-on-one event. You'll leave after investing an hour of your time. We'll leave with a solid action plan to overcome some of your biggest objections or challenges. And like I said, there's no cost or obligation for it. It's just something we felt to be the easiest way to help you understand the value of what we offer. If you're interested, great. If you're not, and this is not the right time for you or whatever, we encourage you to jump on and participate in our free community, the Maximum Growth Membership Program, and be able to access the entire library of our multiple hundred episodes of this webinar series. All right, as I scroll through some of this, let me jump back and try and address some of the questions also that were populated here related to how to develop more business partnerships. Oh, by the way, if you want to take advantage of one of those strategy sessions, they are filled on a first-come, first-served basis, so and it's based on the limited schedules of our actual coaching team. So if you really are serious about wanting to do something with your business in the next couple of months, go ahead and hop in and let us know the best way to contact you, and post that in the Q&A for me if you don't mind. Just pop in your best phone number, email address, so our team can get a hold of you to coordinate scheduling. Otherwise, next question, how to leverage florists and wedding planners. I guess one of you heard me mention that a little bit earlier in the program. Well, okay, a couple of things. Part of the reason I like working with florists and wedding planners, I mean, think about it, life events, young couple getting married, households are being formed. Often there are multiple needs, right? One is the fact, and if it's a young couple, newlyweds, first marriage type situation, you often have the couple, trying to figure out how to buy a house. There's some cool things that we can do with like some of the FHA lending programs that offer like a bridal registry account type of program that we can even help set up with. So by networking with people who are involved with young couples as they're going through that process of planning and getting ready for their wedding, creates a unique opportunity to help those families be able to, instead of contributing, pots and pans, they can donate money to help that young couple with the down payment on their first house together. And instead of getting stuck into the dead-end trap of rent, where zero of their monthly housing payment is going to build equity, in other words, it equates to essentially 100% interest, they can be building a better future for themselves financially and getting a really solid start to begin with. Secondly, is especially wedding planners particularly if they exist in your market. They don't always, you can't always find them in smaller rural markets, but if you can find professional wedding planners that's all they do, they tend to work with more affluent families, or they're working with couples who, it may not be their first marriage. It may be a 30, 40 something busy professional couple who are getting married and they don't have time to do all the planning and arranging for their own wedding, so they hire a professional wedding planner. Well, that also creates opportunities, for example, where you may have maybe the couple has homes that need to be sold in addition to the possibility of buying a home together. Okay. All right, just looking at some of the questions that are in here. Other than the self-study program, can we ask questions of the staff? Absolutely, Ken. Probably one of the best ways to do that is to go ahead and just sign up for one of those strategy sessions. We'll get you scheduled for some time to talk with one of our coaching team, and we can evaluate from there what's the next best way to help you get to the next level with your business with this Double Your Income with Power Partners training program. Let's see, do you have a Facebook group for your members to share experiences and ideas? Yes, we do have a Facebook group, and we'd love it if that became more of a discussion forum for the members, to utilize. We also are working on, we don't have it up and running just yet, but we are working on also creating more of a forum, a discussion platform for our members in the free Maximum Growth membership program for that as well. Okay, let's see, another question that pertains specifically to the topic. Guys, I'm trying to focus on the stuff that is directly connected to how to get more business without having to buy agents, kind of the topic of today's event. One of the other questions talked about what about sellers? Yeah, okay, so guys, every one of your agents, and in fact, by the way, this is often a frequently used objection that realtors will throw at us as loan officers to try and get us out of their hair, especially as the pressure and intensity increases on agents when they're getting, I mean, I talked to an agent earlier this week who literally is getting 2 or 3 calls a day from different loan officers wanting to do business with her. Now, she happens to be one of the top agents in town. I think she did 80 or so deals last year. But anyway, it was kind of interesting to hear her perspective on the whole thing. And one of the often brush off tactics that agents will use is, I only do listings. Well, I mean, unless you're in a really high index market like a San Francisco or Boston metro area, more often than not, you're going to find agents are going to do just as many sell sides as they do listing sides. So there are very few agents that truly are willing to walk away from revenue and income by only working with sellers, although that may be their focus, right? But the way I always kind of respond, and the way we've kind of coached our clients on how to respond to that is great. I love working with listing agents. Let's be honest, buyers are attracted by the home. They don't want the loan. So, it's a great opportunity for me to work with you to help you potentially catch additional revenue and commissions if I'm helping you market that property, if I'm helping you promote the property and the affordability of that property, and also maybe even potentially helping you engage the buyers who might be interested. In addition, by the way, the statistics indicate that a little better than 70% of sellers will buy within 30 days, within 30 miles. And even if they are relocating out of the area, there's a potential where that listing agent could pick up a qualified referral fee by letting me work with them. So my response to agents is a great time to introduce me to your sellers is at or shortly after you have listed a property. There's 2 things that I'll do. One, I'll do a no cost, no obligation home opportunity evaluation or home opportunity review for that seller, which is one, going to make sure that seller's prepared for their next purchase, and 2, along the part of that discussion, I'm going to be talking with them about what they're planning to do, where they're planning to go, and who they're going to be working with representing them on that next purchase, which creates, Mr. Agent, a unique opportunity for me to endorse you as the person that should be helping them with that next purchase, regardless of whether it's in the area or out. which might actually help you as an agent catch 3 commissions instead of just 1. Hopefully that sounds good to you or attractive. Anyway, that's one of the questions that popped in here. All right, guys, keep posting the questions. I guess one last time, I just wanted to kind of reiterate, you know, our only goal here at Maximum Acceleration is helping you get from where you are to where you want to go as fast as humanly possible. The easiest way we found to do that, again, is to offer the no-cost, no-obligation strategy sessions. You know, if you'd like to take advantage of one of those, please just go ahead and post in the Q&A right now that you'd love to have that opportunity. Give us, of course, the best phone number and email address to connect with you, and our team will get a hold of you for scheduling one of those one-on-one appointments for that strategy session. I guess the last thing that I want to do just before I turn you guys loose, and I'll be sticking around for just a few minutes because I'll have to do some stuff on the back end here after we finish the actual program. There's one last thing I would like to ask all of you to consider doing. Before you pick up the next phone call, before you go into your inbox and get buried in reacting to what's in there, take 30 seconds to a minute to create an action plan. You know, knowledge is only powerful if we implement it. It's kind of useless if we don't do anything with it. So think about some of the ideas and strategies that I've shared with you in today's program. And, you know, you've already invested nearly an hour in this program. Why not take something from this that actually makes a change in your day-to-day business? So question number 1 is, what was the most valuable thing you heard in this program? Question number 2 is, what steps do you need to take to implement that that goal, that idea, the thing that you want to get rolling in your business? 3, by when do you want to have that goal accomplished? And 4, who is going to be your accountability partner that you're going to share that information with and ask them to follow up with you regularly as you follow through on implementing this plan? You know, like I said, it's so easy to break the promises we make to ourselves. It's so much harder to break the promises we make to somebody we trust, respect, and value and appreciate. You know, there's one other little kind of piece to this that I didn't share earlier, but back in 1993, there was a research study done by Brigham Young University that talked about how to get ideas into action. And you guys can read the slide, but basically it came down to, if you did those 4 things, if you set a goal, created an action plan to achieve the goal, set deadlines on accomplishing those steps, and shared that with somebody that you could trust to hold you accountable to that plan and check in with you regularly, you had a 95% or better chance of actually accomplishing that goal. So that's what we want to help and encourage you with today. That's what we want to inspire you to take initiative with. If there's anything myself or the rest of the team here at Maximum Acceleration can do to help you grow your business, please don't hesitate to reach out and ask. Our only goal is getting you from where you are to where you want to go as fast as humanly possible. So with that being said, we hope you've appreciated today's program. I hope you've enjoyed hearing some valuable information that will help you grow your business this year. And with that being said, we hope to see you on a future webinar.